Welcome, everyone. I now call the January 20th, 2026 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we'll take a moment to take a roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you. Councilmember Onguluri.
Here.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Councilmember Alders.
Here.
Councilmember Kurd.
Here.
Councilmember Miles.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next up is meeting agenda approval. Does anybody have changes to suggest for tonight's agenda? You don't get a long time on that one. Next up is public engagement opportunities. We've got the Parks Project Open House, where you can come learn about the Park at Bothell Landing Improvement Project. Hear from city representatives, get a progress update on the project, ask questions, and chat with the project team. That is Thursday, January 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Lytle House at Bothell Landing. We have Boards and Commissions Open House. You can bring your questions and curiosity to learn about serving on the city's boards and commissions. Applications open next week for positions on multiple boards and commissions. That's Tuesday, January 27th, 5 to 6 p.m. at Bothell City Hall, with a caveat that sometimes serving on a board or commission leads to other things that you never expected in your life. Next up is the Wayne Open Space Survey. The Wayne Open Space Action Plan Survey is now open to help shape the future design and vision for this important community space. Take about 10 minutes to share what you'd like to see for the future of Wayne Open Space. The survey is open through February 15th at the link below. We have one proclamation tonight for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is celebrated every third Monday in January as a time to remember and celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and whereas Dr. King, along with countless advocates and activists for racial and intersectional forms of justice, made significant contributions to the civil rights movement of the 1960s and impacted the course of American history. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is the only federal holiday designated as a national day of service meant to encourage all Americans to contribute to building a beloved community through unity, service, and transformation. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day provides the opportunity to honor Dr. King's legacy by working toward a more just and equitable society in which every community member is valued not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And whereas the city of Bothell is proud to offer opportunities to engage in service activities locally and provide resources to learn more about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., now therefore I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the city of Bothell, do hereby proclaim January 19th, 2026 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the city of Bothell, and encourage every one of our community members to participate in a personally meaningful service project so we can eradicate injustice and create lasting change that will contribute to building our beloved community here in Bothell. Which I will also point out, that building the beloved community is one of our council goals and one of the pillars of what we do. We have, I believe, Dan Hudson and Terrence Bedford here to accept the proclamation. Meet me up there. There you go. Thank you so much for being here, and you're welcome to say a few words.
Thank you very much.
I forgot to sign it. I'll do that while you talk.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity to be here today. Martin Luther King Jr. Day honors the life, leadership, and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., one of the most influential figures of the civil rights movement. It is observed annually on the third Monday of January, close to Dr. King's birthday on January 15th. The day has been recognized as a federal holiday since 1986. Thank you to the City Council of Bothell for this proclamation. It is indeed an honor. MLK Day is also significant as the first federal holiday honoring an African American, established after years of advocacy following Dr. King's assassination in 1968. It stands as both a remembrance and a call to action. Images of black people being hosed down, beaten, or attacked by police dogs is still vivid in my mind some 50 years later. Sadly, we are seeing similar images today. The sound of Dr. Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech also rings clear in my mind and is a constant reminder to judge one by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. Let us not only commemorate Dr. King's leadership in the fight for racial equality, justice, and human dignity through nonviolent resistance, let us continue to work together and press on to challenge segregation, voter suppression, and systemic racism, and continue reshaping the moral conscience of the nation, starting right here in Bothell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is public comment, not public engagement.
For a picture.
Oh, yeah, let's do a picture.
Anybody from the
Now we will do public comment, and thank you for whoever was like, we're going to take a picture and keeping me on task. Yeah. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We received one written comment from a person named Mary, no last name, regarding Martin Luther King Day and the stuff happening in Minneapolis right now. So those will be made part of the record, and you should have all received a copy of that. I do not have anybody who's signed up to speak at the meeting tonight. However, if there's anybody in the audience, please step to the podium, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes, and there you go. And if you're in the virtual audience, please use the raise hand function, and I will panel you in once we get through the people in the audience here.
Oh, hit the little button and it'll turn red. Now we can hear you.
Okay. I don't expect a picture. My name is Phil Moser, and I live on Riverbend Drive in Bothell. In planning any further development of what is apparently being called the Wayne Open Space, safety at the entry has to be the highest priority. Access to that park is from 96th Avenue Northeast, between Highway 522 to the north and the Sammamish River to the south. That short section of road has multiple serious hazards. There's 2 blind curves, 2 southbound lanes merge onto one in the middle of the first curve. There's a Metro bus stop right in the middle of that merge. 1 northbound lane splits into 3 on the same curve. 4 curb cuts serve 1 commercial building, 2 gravel parking lots, and a residential development with 59 townhomes. There's an additional curb cut into a large and very heavily used construction material and vehicle staging area. At the south end of this stretch of roadway, there's a narrow 2-lane bridge with no bike path and a sign at each end advising that bicyclists should go ahead and use a full lane. 96th has become a major north-south alternative to Interstate Highway 405, southbound in the morning and northbound in the afternoon. Cars often speed by at 35 or 40 miles an hour well above the posted and code mandated limit of 25. Police have told me that they cannot make traffic stops there because there's no safe place to pull cars off the road. Pedestrians, bikes, and cars get frustrated by how long it takes to get onto 96th or cross the road. Took me 31 cars today to take my right turn. Drivers accelerate into smaller than safe breaks in traffic, often without sufficient attention to nearby pedestrians or bikes. Pedestrians seize opportunities to go across that are simply too short. Accidents have already happened. A car with a baby on board was rear-ended. A pedestrian was hit and her leg was broken. Accidents continue to happen, and it seems likely to me that the city could be held liable. This area gets very heavy use. It mixes cars, bicycles, pedestrians, dog walkers, strollers, young children, seniors, and runners. No sidewalk on the west side going in either direction. Getting to a sidewalk absolutely requires either walking in the roadway or crossing it without any marked or controlled intersection. City has repeatedly suggested that people use one of the two existing crosswalks, one across the river to the south and another at the Highway 522, but there's no sidewalk that can get foot traffic or bikes there. City workers don't use those crossings. City staff met on site with local residents last year. They asked that for our safety, we meet on the east side of 96th. But they themselves crossed 96th directly and then led the whole group of us back right across the middle of 96th. I understand and fully appreciate it takes time to plan, allocate funding, and complete infrastructure improvements, but it can be done and it must be done.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mosier. Time's up. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Or anybody in the virtual audience who wishes to speak? Please use the raise hand function. That's all I have.
Thank you, City Clerk. City Manager report is up next. So City Manager Stannard, give your report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. I have two brief updates, and then we'll have one staff report tonight. On the updates, a bit of good news that was released today out of Olympia. As Council may be aware, back in October, the city led a application for a grant that is known as the CHIP grant program. CHIP stands for Connecting Housing to Infrastructure Program. The CHIP program is designed as an offset towards affordable housing projects, of which the cost of development often is what when we have these conversations about affordable housing, cost of development is part of what makes housing cost money. And so one way that public agencies can contribute towards successful affordable housing projects is to offset some of those costs. And yet, we also have to make the city whole. So if you're a ratepayer, as we all are, that you want to make sure that the rates for services come in. So things like connecting water, sewer pipes, newer upgraded stormwater management, all requires a public infrastructure. What the CHIP program does is it gives an offset then of where cities apply on behalf of affordable housing projects, and there's an opportunity then to waive those fees with the grant money coming in. Today, the Department of Commerce announced an investment of $54.5 million across the state. The maximum allocation or award of this program is $1 million, and I'm pleased to share that the City of Bothell was awarded $1 million for the Bothell Urban Project being led by Bridge and the Bothell United Methodist Church. So we're pleased to be able to further contribute to seeing that project move forward, and we'll be continuing to wait for any initial activities from Bridge in terms of permit, and we will let the community and the council know once that happens. Secondly, just a brief opportunity to see if we have a couple of volunteers. So you didn't know you were going to be asked to volunteer, but I think it's a low risk. Last week, under projected agenda items, Councilmember Alcabra requested that staff bring back a conversation at study session for the council to have related to ALPRs and technology and the full safety of our community, including again, the actual safety of information as well. Staff met last week to frame what that conversation would look like, and I've proposed to the council member that we do some sort of pre-meeting to make sure that we're on the right track, because I think that is a conversation that, frankly, we could have many hours on. And he agreed to that, but also suggested it would be helpful to have one or two other council members participate to get different perspectives. And so with that, unless there's any gaps that I should fill in, Councilmember Alcabra, we'd be looking for, again, 1 to 2 council members who would like to join in that. We'll get something scheduled once we know who our participants are. Is there any interest?
Councilmember Dodd?
Thanks. Out loud saying that I'm raising my hand, just in case raising my hand isn't enough. Thank you.
Is that something anybody else would like to do?
I'm also interested.
This is a speak now or forever hold your peace moment. It's not really, but, oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
So that gets us to 3?
Yep.
Perfect. We'll get something scheduled. And again, the whole conversation will come to the full council following that meeting. So we'll work on getting both meetings scheduled and look forward to the discussion. So finally, under the city manager report tonight, we do have one staff report, as I mentioned, and this is an update to help respond to something I believe the council will be interested in. It is related to really some of the past conversations and also part of your council vision. And so I'm going to turn things over to Gabby Kuna, our DEI coordinator, and they are joined by Becky Range, our assistant city manager tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Gabby.
Hi, all. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and community. For folks that don't know, my name is Gabby. My pronouns are they, them, and I have the pleasure of serving as the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Coordinator. Tonight, I am sharing an update on a new community partnership policy. As a reminder, we're not looking for action tonight. This is simply an update for council and community. Tonight, I'll be covering our policy purpose, background, and development process, the roles and responsibilities of staff as outlined by this policy, types of partnerships, and then the next steps and future opportunities that are coming from this policy. So just for some background, this policy is a direct result of not only your council vision and strategic priorities, which called for the development of a DEI strategic roadmap and opportunities to enhance cultural events and celebrations, but is an action item outlined in that roadmap. The action item specifically is to formalize a way to sponsor, amplify, and support community events that foster a welcoming culture, a sense of belonging, provide a multicultural education element, and or celebrate Bothell's diversity. This resulting policy, as background, has provided a descriptive framework for city staff, so it's not deciding that we're going to do new things, rather it is describing and formalizing the things that we're already doing and the relationships that we've spent years building. And it was created in collaboration with city staff from all departments, as well as the Bothell community members. So I have the opportunity to sit here in front of you tonight, but this wouldn't be possible without the city staff and the community members who helped contribute to drafting this policy. This policy starts by outlining staff roles and responsibilities. So, of course, all staff are still responsible for ensuring that partnerships adhere to existing City of Bothell policies, as well as RCWs. Departments are responsible for prioritizing and pursuing partnerships at their discretion, and community partnerships must still always carry out a fundamental purpose of the city and provide a public benefit. This policy is flexible enough to help us prioritize partnerships by departments that all contribute to our shared mission and values, but might have varying levels of staffing capacity or projects that they're working on. So we ask the departments, when prioritizing and pursuing partnerships, staff will consider whether or not the proposed partnership aligns with the city's mission, values, visions, and policies, how it benefits the public. Does it fit within the existing department's budget considerations, and might it have the potential to cause positive or negative impacts on the community's relationship or the city's reputation? So we help provide a framework so that city departments feel that they are empowered to continue building partnerships in the community. This policy outlines 4 different types of partnerships so that both community organizations of all different capacities and levels are able to partner with the city, starting with participation. So that's something as simple as city staff attending a community event, speaking on behalf of the city, or supporting a community event program in some way. We also include promotion that includes city staff sharing an event or program information on official City of Bothell communications channels. That might be something like our community calendar, our social media, our e-newsletter, and so cross-promoting things that are already happening in our community. It might include co-planning, so staff are invited to collaborate with the community partners to organize events or programs. This might be something like Indigenous Peoples Day, which we do every fall with the city, with Cascadia College, where we actually spend months in meetings planning that event so that it fulfills the needs of our community and the city of Bothell. And then funding. This is when city staff have programmatic budgets that might contribute to an event through any sort of material funding. That might be buying snacks for a program. That might be waiving of fees, like existing events fees or something like that. And these are not mutually exclusive. So for example, Indigenous Peoples Day as an event, we might help fund the refreshment budget for that. We're involved in the co-planning, but we're also cross-promoting it on our city channels. So depending on staff capacity and organizational needs, we might engage in different types of partnerships for one project. Thinking about next steps, this project, like almost all projects I work on, is a living document, and we'll continue to see how it needs to grow and change as we continue to implement it with this community needs and our staff's organizational needs. Next steps, we're planning on supporting departments who are seeking to formalize and create partnership prioritization systems. So some departments already have something like this. For example, our arts grant might fall under a community partnership. They already have a criteria, they have a committee that helps them make decisions, but some of our departments who have been creating relationships in our community don't already have an existing system. So we'll work with them to ensure that those systems align with their mission and values while still fitting within this policy and supporting their needs. We'll work on community outreach to ensure that we're sharing partnership opportunities with our community so that they know that this exists, so that they know that they can approach us with opportunities, and so that we're getting the word out so that people know that we're deeply dedicated to partnering with our community organizations. And then long-term, exploring funding opportunities and or our community grants program during future budget cycles so that we can expand the funding opportunities that we've created through this partnership policy. Again, we're not looking for any council action tonight, but I am happy to take any questions you might have about this.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Since I'm number 7, I go first. Thank you so much. This is very exciting. And I look forward to hopefully collaborating on this also. I feel two thoughts. Number one, don't feel like you have to do it all by yourself. We have, I'll talk about myself. I'm ready to help. So if there's opportunities where you think you need help, send an email to the council and I will respond, perhaps. I don't know. Depends on how much you're paying me. And then the second issue is we are in a budget cycle, the biennial budget now, and you mentioned something about that. If you have a list of things that you already know about or the help that you're going to need in the future, bring it up to us and let's discuss it during our budget discussions and see if there's a place for it, because I feel like it's important for the city to be out in the community, which is something we've been talking about for a while, which you've been doing an amazing job, but you're only one person, so yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Anguillari.
Count me in as well. And do we have any events coming up like from the city of Bothell for the DEA exclusively?
So we actually just wrapped up our MLK Day event yesterday, which is a great example of an ongoing partnership that we've had for a couple years now, where we act not only as funding and collaborative partners with Whale Scout, which is a nonprofit. Our next upcoming event that we have is for the Lunar New Year. This is a new partnership we're working on with the Bothell Library, and we'll be co-planning and helping to fund an event, including a lion dance and a Mandarin story time. I will have more details about that coming soon.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Curd.
Thank you for the presentation. The staff briefing mentioned the policy as an attachment document, but I couldn't find it online. Do you mind sending that policy document to council when it's ready?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thanks for the policy. Working in large organizations, I think writing down what people are doing and making sure that everyone's on the same page has a lot of value. And then just making sure that everybody is on the same page has a lot of value. So thank you for that. And this would have been funnier 2 people ago, but I agree the deputy mayor, this is going to kill me.
Deputy Mayor
Which the deputy mayor emeritus would be a great volunteer.
Councilmember Miles.
Yes. Do you have a calendar for all of your events?
So on the City of Bothell's website, we do have a community and cultural calendar, which outlines the not only the community and cultural observances that exist throughout the year, there's a special emphasis on fasting holidays. We ask our city staff to review that so that they aren't scheduling meetings in times where it may be inappropriate. That also denotes our recurring proclamations. So you saw like tonight we have the MLK Day proclamation, which we do every January. So it denotes the recurring proclamations that we have all year. It does not currently denote the events that we have. We typically meet with our community partners each year to see what events they have, and then we try to make sure that we're prioritizing those as equitably as possible. So we're not just assuming that because we've done Indigenous Peoples Day with the same partners for the last couple of years that we're going to be doing it this year. So we don't have a standing events calendar on the website, but we do have the community and cultural one, and that is updated for 2026 already.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Yeah, thanks.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really glad to see this come forward and be able to have more formal pathways to work with our community. I think my question is, how does this work either in conjunction with or parallel to the sponsorships program so that we can, so that when there's an event that the city's putting on or that we value in the community, but it is, but the partner is then like sponsoring, paying, and we're helping promote it. Like, does that overlap with this policy?
So the way that we've talked about it so far, and I think that this will continue to grow and change as we implement it and we find different ways that it might overlap, is that we think about sponsorship through the lens of money coming into the city, and we think about this as the opposite. So this is when we're able to provide funds out. So that's where they aren't necessarily overlap, but they are. We did create this policy with that sponsorship policy in mind. Anybody else?
Great, I appreciate that. That's good clarification.
And that was a good question. I was wondering that earlier, and was totally going to forget to ask it now, but I was wondering during the presentation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate this. I'm looking forward to seeing the formalized copy of that come out as well. And thanks to all my colleagues for their wonderful comments and questions, and we appreciate it. All right, next up, we have council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Council members. All right, in that case, we'll move on to projected agenda discussion if anybody has something they would like to talk about. In that case, I would love to get a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda.
And
I second.
perfect, and just to anybody who may want to know, seconds do not require me to recognize you to speak. It's like an exception, so I usually won't. I'll just wait for somebody to say it. All right, I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from Councilmember Dodd, a second from Deputy Mayor Alders. Nope. Anguilari. Okay, thank you. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Anguilari.
Yes.
Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alders.
Yes.
Councilmember Curd.
Yes.
Councilmember Miles.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right, next up is our first agenda bill of the night. It's ordinances and resolutions. Actually, it's not an agenda bill. I lied. It's the Arch 2025 Housing Trust Fund recommendation. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, council members. Tonight, I am here to present a recommended funding package which was identified in the 2025 Housing Trust Fund process. By way of background, each year ARCH, which is an acronym for a Regional Coalition for Housing, puts out a call for applications for affordable housing funding. In the fall, a group of appointed representatives, which is known as the Citizen Advisory Board, or CAB, reviews the applications and makes a recommendation to the ARCH Executive Board. The board then reviews and approves the recommendations and then transmits it to each member agency of ARCH, which is 15 cities in King County. So it's a process for sure. Just as a reminder, I serve as the city's representative on the executive board. Community Development Director Jason Greenspan is the city's alternate to the board. For tonight, then, we are coming to you for action. The council has a proposed funding package before you for consideration. It's scheduled for action tonight, and I will be highlighting the 7 projects that are identified for funding, as well as some additional context which should help with your consideration. Again, just an acknowledgement of, while oftentimes we come to you with a study session first, in this case, knowing that we have 15 cities who are reviewing the same package, it is one where, again, that doesn't put you in a situation where you have to vote a certain way, but in study sessions, we're often being creative, and there's a little less creativity in this process at this point. It's gone through quite a bit to get here, so hopefully that helps. So just some context around this program and what it has done and can do. The program itself, again, each city, if you're a member, and as well as King County, identifies funding related to ARCH communities and contributes. Bothell's direct portion of that contribution that goes into the Housing Trust Fund is a portion of sales tax revenue. And for 2025, our contribution was $119,000. The amount has been budgeted, and there's no new impact depending on your decision tonight. This was an anticipated expense. Over the course of the program's history, a total of $120 million has been distributed then to projects in East King County. In that, it has supported about 110 developments, producing a little over 6,000 units of housing. It's both a great outcome, but also kind of a sobering reminder of the need for housing affordability in our region. Keeping in mind that 6,000 units, while certainly is better than zero, it actually, if that was produced in Bothell alone, it still would not meet the required future need of affordable housing in Bothell by 2044, based on the targets that we have in our planning documents. I also will note that for Councilmember Miles, your selection of the ARCH elected officials group last week means that I expect when you have your quarterly meetings, you will be discussing that very issue probably a few times. So this is a good contextual warm up for you. Knowing then, too, that there's going to be great interest in this funding, I mentioned that there's a Citizen Advisory Board. Well, they were faced with a difficult decision of where the applications for funding outstripped the funding available by about a ratio of 3-to-1. So they did develop some criteria of which they were going to look at their funding priorities going into this process. So some of the things they look at are timely delivery of housing. So in that case, if for a project to be awarded, there needs to be assurance that the project is ready to be moving forward in the near future. This isn't something that, funding gets tied up and then 10 years later we're still waiting. So the ability to advance through the entitlement and permitting process quickly, and the ability to secure other sources in a timely manner. In other words, if you see a project recommended for funding, that has been vetted and there is assurance that it is ready to move forward. Also, maximizing the unit creation with ARCH investment. So a project is one thing, but leveraging the private investment and maximizing competitiveness of other sources, ultimately there's a desire then to make sure that this bit of funding can create as many units as possible. And you'll see there's a range of units created within the funding package before you. Also looking for cost-effective development. So sometimes that can look like repurposing an existing structure. For example, there's one in tonight's package that is a 1992 construction that's being used for affordable housing going forward. There's other objectives too. That's the great old catch-all at the end, the number 3. So it looks at things like target populations, geographic equity, knowing that we're a regional partnership, and so if everything's landing in the same corner of East King County, that might be a problem. Preservation of existing housing, looking at transit-oriented development, racial equity, shelter and supportive housing, and sustainable and environmentally friendly solutions within the application are all factors that the Citizen Advisory Board considers. So as mentioned then, demand in this application cycle was high. Overall funding requests was around $14.4 million. In addition to the $4.6 million of Arch Trust funds, one thing I did want to note that is made up of $4 million in member contributions, like the city of Bothell's, as well as loan repayments. So you'll notice many of the funding of this is providing low interest loans. So as they're repaid, that makes more money available for the next project, and then also interest earnings. There's also in this package about $600,000 of CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funds from one particular city. Also, you'll note that there are a couple of cities that have a little more to spend on this, and we can get into that another time if that's of interest. But the city of Bellevue contributes an additional $10 million from a separate affordable housing fund, as well as $20 million from a housing stability program. And Issaquah contributed $1.88 million from the Issaquah Including Housing Investment Pool. All right, I am now going to transition into the list of the 7 projects that were recommended for funding. And we start here in Bothell. So the top project was one we're familiar with, and that is the Bothell Urban Project that is being developed by Bridge Housing in partnership with the Bothell United Methodist Church. Their request was for $1.5 million, and this project is being recommended for full funding. I'm going to use an acronym quite a bit in the remainder of this presentation, which is AMI, and I just want to share that stands for Area Median Income. If anybody's watching and has not heard of the Area Median Income modifier before, it's a midpoint income for a specific geographic area. So if you look at Bothell and our community and what is the income of houses, we look for the midpoint. And then you'll see there's percentages of that midpoint for criteria of who would be eligible for housing in these different developments. It's something that's calculated annually by HUD and mainly used to determine eligibility for programs that we're going to be discussing. So a couple of things then about this project is that you'll see there's 200 units. I think you'll be familiar with that. That was something that the City Council was pretty vocal about, of wanting to make sure that there was at least 200 units in this project. And the makeup of this, we'll spend a little more detail since it is closer to home. There's 30% AMI, 50% AMI, and 60% AMI, in addition to one market rate unit for the building manager. In the 30% AMI range, we're looking at 10 one-bedroom, 5 two-bedroom, and 5 three-bedroom units. At 50%, it's 30 one-bedroom, so 30 one-bedroom units, 25 two-bedroom units, and 25 three-bedroom units. And in 60% range, it's 60 one-bedroom, 19 two-bedroom, and 21 three-bedroom. Just as you see lists of other projects, or even of thinking about years past, that's pretty phenomenal. That many times in a project such as this, it's going to be made up of strictly studio or one-bedroom apartments. And so having family-oriented housing is a great opportunity. I also just want to put in a little bit of context too of, well, what does that mean? So when we look at what that income band represents, and again, this is way more detail you'll get than other slides, but as we're getting the ball rolling a little bit. So for a one-person family, an 80% AMI would be about $84,000 right now. 50% would be $55,000, and extremely low, or 30%, would be $33,000. If you bump that up to a family of 4, those ranges are $121,000, $78,000 for that 50%, and at 30%, it's $57,000. So it gives you a picture of the wage earning and eligibility of what a project like this opens up. The next project is in Bellevue. It's first of several that you'll see in Bellevue, and that is the Altair at East Main. They requested $1 million for this in a contingency loan, and we're being proposed to be awarded of $500,000. The composition of this project is made up of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom at a range of 30 to 60% AMI, so similar to what we're seeing here in Bothell. And then there's also set-aside specifically called out for individuals exiting homelessness with services provided by Hope Link. The next project is also in Bellevue, recommended for $500,000. It consists of 100 units, which is made up of, again, a nice range of studio to 3 bedrooms. The income qualifier in this case is 60% AMI. It's going to be built on surplus property to be purchased from St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. And again, there are, in this case, there's set-asides for households with people with disabilities. In this case, there was a little bit extra provided to the board. The project delivers a significant number of affordable housing units with an anticipated construction to start in the fourth quarter of this year. It helps advance some programs focused in Bellevue. They have an action plan identified for building increased density on faith-owned land. So there's funding here from both Arch and from the city of Bellevue. Moving on to the next one, Orchard Gardens is also in Bellevue. I think this is the last of our Bellevue projects. It has a recommended award of $1.16 million, made up of $500,000 in Housing Trust Fund, which is the Arch Fund, and then I mentioned some community development block grants. This is the one that's receiving a little over $600,000 in CDBG funding. It's a Habitat for Humanity project, which means it's also offering home ownership opportunities up to 80% AMI, and that is for 25 3-bedroom units. Just to the south of us, located in Kirkland, is the Kirkland House. That's a good name for a house in Kirkland, I suppose. Full funding is requested in the form of $212,600 from the Housing Trust Fund, an additional $250,000, $250,000 from the city of Kirkland. The Kirkland House consists of 6 bedrooms of 30% and 50% AMI housing opportunity. Next is Family Village in Redmond, also conveniently in Redmond. It's a building in which was constructed in 1984. I was off by two years when I was trying to ad-lib. It's not previously received Arch funding in its history, though. This would then help advance affordable housing by providing 20 2- and 3-bedroom units offered at 30% AMI. Arch funding is being recommended at just under $1 million at $976,000, with then an additional $626,000 and change coming from the Housing Trust Fund, or that is from the Housing Trust Fund, excuse me, and $35,000 from the city of Redmond specifically. The project supports critical rehabilitation and preservation of existing family-sized 30% AMI units for people exiting homelessness. So again, the preserving of affordable housing, this is an example of that where the CAB was prioritizing not wanting to see an older property go to be redeveloped. This funding will allow for some upgrades and be able to stay in use. And then finally, our 7th project is Life Enhanced Options Trailhead in Issaquah. It's a condominium option with King County within a King County Housing Authority larger development. So 7 units, which will be studio suites offered at 30 and 40% AMI. And this will specifically then serve people with intellectual and developmental disability. So all together, what you'll see then is that this package of projects shows a list of the awarded projects in tonight's legislation. Again, $4.6 million and an additional 505 units and homes for individuals and families in our region. And again, specifically too with 201 units then here in Bothell. With that, I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have, and we'll also be turning things back over to the mayor to lead the rest of the discussion.
Not everybody all at once. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. This is exciting, especially to see Bothell Urban listed among the recommended projects and to see that it's the largest project that is being recommended by Arch this year. Just really grateful to all the member cities at Arch and the community members who are involved in this process to select these. We can obviously pass the resolution tonight and vote on it, but it just means a lot to see so many people working together to bring these units available, and all of the thought and creativity and compassion that exists within these plans. So thank you.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. It's exciting, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, that we have a project right here in Bothell. It's about time we get something on the record to be done here. And I want to give you kudos for cracking your first joke on the microphone about the Kirkland House. Nice.
It was a good one too.
Yeah, it was.
Snorted.
I snorted. Yeah.
This one that you got.
That's the first one. The first one I got. I guess you were cracking a lot of jokes before, so I guess first one I got. First language, not English, as you can. The other topic, which is a larger topic, and I think it's part of the overall Arch conversation, given the housing shortage, especially in the lower AMIs, I think it will be good to have. I don't know if it's an outcome of that big discussion, or is something that we as a council should address, perhaps at the retreat or something, about how do we approach this affordability issue that we have.
Yeah, it's a great question, Council Member, and it is one where, again, there's a number of ways that the council has addressed it through your comprehensive plan, and that's last week, even in the conversation, when we put it into the context of when we're looking at what is the city's role. Our direct role is providing the opportunity, right? So the conditions exist so that this type of housing can be developed. And I think there's also a reality of when we're starting to look at 30% or lower, or even 50% or lower, or even 80% and lower, there's something more than market condition that will really need to be there. And so I think absolutely yes and yes. I think a conversation among the council too of, are there any other tools or strategies that you've done a lot for housing, and if there are anything more specific around how to produce, incentivize, or even contribute to affordable housing in Bothell is a worthy conversation. At the regional level, in terms of what Arch can do, we've spoken a few times in the past, and for our two new council members, I'll just share that there's been two significant activities in my tenure here and participation on the board that really is starting to ask those questions as well. One of them was a strategic planning exercise, and really the takeaway from that was the mantra of building more affordable housing faster. So wanting to make sure that processes are not getting in the way, but also realizing that Arch is now over 30 years in existence, and a lot of good work has happened, and the need is still great. And so there needs to be some other conditions. I think within Arch conversations, there's always going to be a conversation that comes up about, is there any other funding opportunities? Again, knowing that cities are contributing as they can, but are there other things that we haven't explored? And maybe that's part of our study session tonight. But as a group, Arch is having that conversation. But overall, I do think the city of Bothell's participation in history within Arch is commendable, but at the same time, there's more work that needs to be done to achieve what is needed for Bothell. And again, it's not our responsibility to develop the number of units of housing that are required in Bothell, but realistically, there's some other levers that we need to look to pull. So I think it's great to bring that up. And so the quarterly convening that I mentioned for Councilmember Miles, definitely I think that's a big interest in that. There's been council members from multiple Arch jurisdictions that have said, let's start getting together and think about what are strategies and funding opportunities that as a cohort we can work on. And I also think the cities who are seriously looking at this, saying we need to make something different, are going to come up with things too. If that helps.
Sorry, just to follow up. It does help. When can we have the conversation amongst ourselves here? Is it fair to wait after the Arch convening the meeting to see what the outcome of that is before we have a conversation, or do we have a conversation before then, or like?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be good to get that one on the calendar at the very least, but I think, that realistically, I would say if it's something that you want to prioritize, put it in your own hands and not wait to see. Because I think, 4 times a year, it'll be a great effort and we have great representation for it. But the progress that'll be made in a year through 4 meetings probably won't solve the question, if that's fair.
All right, thank you.
If only they would. Councilmember Miles?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know, when does our project kick off? We're shovel ready, correct?
Not yet. It's a great question. So this project, the city is not, we're not part of putting the program forward or the project forward, other than we are in fact a permitting agency. So we'll know more when building permits come in, and we also do have an agreement with the partners, with both Bridge and Bothell United Methodist Church, around contributing land towards this project. So we're definitely going to be informed. What we're hearing, and then also with the previous announcement that I made tonight about the CHIP grant, is that the CHIP grant requires construction to begin in 24 months, and really the Arch looking for shovel-ready projects too. It's the same thing. So we would anticipate that permits will come into the city sometime this year, but I know there's other funding work to be done. Here tonight was 2 potential good news stories of $1 million towards utilities and $1.5 million low interest loan from Arch, but there's more to be done there too. So you'll be seeing and hearing more progress in the next year and a half, I believe.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Palcabra?
Just to follow up on the follow-up, I like your suggestion of having conversation. Do you think the retreat is coming up, like we don't want to, is that something that's appropriate for that time?
Yeah, your retreat will focus a lot on if there's any tweaks to the council vision as well as priorities that you have. So if it would be in the context of making it a priority. If you'd also like, I think we're also having some, again, not only development activity, but we're working on lots of housing related initiatives. So I can work with community development and see how that might already be built in. I mean, I know that there's interest in revisiting some programs like MFTE, tax exemption, that sort of thing. So those are all tools in the toolbox, but we can look at it from the grand level too and make sure that something's teed up and ready, and I'll follow up with a date. Okay,
it was a question. It wasn't a question, a request in the form of a question. I was like, actually.
Yeah, I think we will be having conversations. So I do want to put it in context so you know when to see it. But certainly, again, if it's as you come up with what are the things that you'd like to see advanced over the next 3 years, I definitely think it's appropriate for a potential retreat conversation as well.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. As part of the follow-up to Councilmember Alcabra's follow-up, I would love to talk through Arch and Hasco and just understand, by participating in only Arch, are we missing half the city as far as affordable housing grants go, and just get a really good grounding on that. I'm not advocating that we join both. I need more information before I know where I would advocate on that.
Absolutely. I'll follow up with you too. But the quick answer on that, so for people who might be new to this, there is an organization that focuses on affordable housing policy in Snohomish County. One thing about Arch is that it does look at Bothell holistically. Well, the last couple of weeks, we've talked about some organizations that see us as half of a city. Our agreement with Arch is not limited to that. So Arch is City of Bothell from border to border, which is fortunate. To my knowledge, Hasco does not do grant funding. I think they're more policy analysis work. So I don't know that there's funding, but I'll confirm that and get back to you.
Yes, and I was on a board for a year through Snohomish County Cities and Towns, run by county staff that did grant. So it's all complicated, but mainly just if they're looking at the whole city, then that's all I'm concerned about. But it's good to check in.
It is helpful, but again, every little bit helps, right? So maybe it's a strategic advantage and opportunity and all that too, that we do exist in 2 counties, and that does open us up to other potential. So we'll look.
Councilmember Miles.
Yes, is Pasco the equivalent to Arch?
I'll have to look at what the full scope of the organization is. Yeah, I don't believe so. The difference is that with Arch, that because it is made up of member cities that are all contributing and trying to align policy, that I think makes it unique. But what I'll do a little more digging is to see how complementary.
No worries. Not trying to put you on the carpet.
Councilmember Curd.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. This is really exciting. I see in the attachment 1 that has the funding recommendations table that there are a couple of projects that have been awarded Housing Trust Fund awards from 2021 and 2023. So I assume projects that need a cost increase or are going forward with additional planning efforts, because these projects are complicated, they come back to Arch and ask for an updated amount or a higher amount. And is that previous award weighted in the decision from the executive committee on whether they are prioritized for more funding in the future?
Yeah, so CAB definitely looks at that, and it's typically then the additional funding is not a larger amount, it's a smaller amount, and you're right. I think the use case in that is usually either some other form of funding fell through or costs are higher, and so it's the question of, we're already investing in this. If this is the amount that needs to get it over the line, does it make sense to provide additional? And I think typically that's something that then Arch staff really scrutinizes, as well as the Citizen Advisory Board as they're making their recommendation, is making sure that that's true and it's not, there will be another one. And again, the projects are a lot of surprises, and we are in a world right now with a lot of volatility. And so it's absolutely always possible that with all intent, if somebody comes back once, that there and says there won't be a twice, maybe there will be, but that is what you're going to be seeing typically in these.
Okay. Obviously, the Bothell Urban team put forward a really competitive application if it was funded at this amount, or if it was recommended for such high funding. But it sounds like it may be well positioned in the future too, just because of how well it came out in this sort of round of funding recommendations. I also noticed that Kirkland and Redmond have additionally added investments into the projects that are in their cities, and because we contributed land, or are in the process of contributing land, and that doesn't get weighed the same as a financial investment. I mean, obviously it was a competitive application and it came out on top, which is great. But how does that, the contribution of land or non-financial, I mean, it is financial, but not really. How does that weigh into the executive review?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a significant factor. And really, there's a difference between a year ago where there was Bridge also applied, and I was looking back at my notes from a year ago's presentation, like it was the next one below the line was Bothell Urban. And a big part of the difference is that the site control that is there, that last year after the funding round is when the city entered into an agreement with details of what would be the conditions of which the property would transfer. For Arch and this award consideration, that is a significant factor. In fact, you'll see there was an interesting project also, if you read through the attachment of the ones that didn't get funded, a program that was also looking for to be able to sell units, and the limiter on that project was they didn't have available land. So it was a concept, and it's an interesting concept, but without land to attach it to, it's not as competitive. So in this case, the city's potential contribution of having a legal agreement to support this project was seen as not only, again, giving the site location and the conditions of which it would happen, but also showed that partnership. And, to your point, where there are some other cities that have contributed financially, really thankful that we were able to do things like the land consideration, but then also the CHIP grant that fortunately that press release came out today so we can talk about it. But it really does show, again, those are ways that the city can be supportive of this without writing a check or contributing at the expense of something else too. So it's a good way of being able to show support, and it definitely did factor into the strength of the application.
Great. Yeah, this is a great project, and it's a great team that's able to use so many creative ways for gathering the funds.
Councilmember Anguillari.
Thank you for the presentation and great details. Affordable housing is a national problem. I'm glad to see Bothell is trying our best to do whatever we can. Definitely we should try unique ways to achieve affordable housing. So thank you very much, and happy to see more projects from Bothell.
I'm kind of echo what Councilmember Curd said. The thing that I was thinking is, like, we had the good news from the state earlier, and I hope that this all portends well for the other grant applications that are out there right now. And I am so proud of this project. Like, we've got not only a good quantity of units, but a good quantity of bedrooms and a good quantity of family-sized units. And it's apparently a really compelling project for grants as well. So I'm just super excited about all of this news, and super excited for a project to get built and for people to be helped and to have places for people to move. So thank you. Councilmember Curd?
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the duly appointed administrating agency for ARCH to execute all documents necessary to enter into agreements for the funding of affordable housing projects as recommended by the ARCH Executive Board, utilizing funds from the city's House Trust Fund.
Second.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Curd, could you repeat that? No.
I move to, no, just kidding. Watch the recording.
I have a motion from Councilmember Curd and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Anguillari?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alderks?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Miles?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right, next up is a study session. Do we want a quick break?
Yeah.
Okay, I got a lot of nods. It is 7:02. We will come back at 7:15 and convene down there for a study session. All right, everybody, welcome back. Our next agenda item is a study session that is a federal update and proposed 2026 federal legislative agenda. City Manager.
All right, Council, this is our one study session for this evening. And I am pleased to say we're being joined tonight by Jake Johnston of the Johnston Group, who is our contract federal lobbyist. I'll give a brief presentation just to orient you, and then Jake is here to really do all the heavy lifting of answering questions and helping you through this discussion tonight. I'll also note that in this photo, you would see a mayor and a deputy mayor. If it was down here, you were standing next to me when I took this picture, so little reminiscing. All right, so tonight with the study session, really this is just to provide some direction, both for the 2026 federal legislative agenda, but also for Jake to be able to hear from you about the things that matter to Bothell through your lens, which is what he is here for, and again, help you kind of understand what he's navigating on behalf of Bothell for us. I'll note that the city doesn't currently have a 2026 federal legislative agenda. It's obviously a practice we use in the state where things are a lot more compact. We're dealing with short sessions. We're dealing with thousands of bills. I read hundreds of them this weekend. Maybe not that many, but 20. It felt like hundreds. But we are looking for council direction with your agenda and your policy manual so we can make quick decisions and quick reviews on bills that have quick timelines. The pace of the federal government is different, and also the interests of Bothell are a lot more targeted and specific. So, part of tonight's direction and feedback too is if having a formal legislative agenda would be helpful to you. But ultimately tonight, what we will talk about is what are the things where the energy is being focused on the most. With that, there's 5 things that you'll see in your packet that I want to highlight for you. And we'll start with 3 things that are really funding related, which is an area that the city has been very successful at over the years. Again, anytime we talk about the capital facilities budget, for example, I like to talk about how our ratio of success of funding is really it's better than 50-50 of every 50 cents we put into a project. We get money to match it, about 51 cents actually. And so federal funding has been a big part of that strategy over the years. And certainly too, we're facing different challenges today. So some of the challenges not only receiving but also maintaining that funding. So 3 projects or three buckets here, and I'll talk a little bit about the first 2 just to help orient our 2 new council members as well, and maybe remind others. But one of them is really looking to, again, close the final gap on the Woodcrest utility project, which I'll touch on in a moment. There's also been a significant effort that Jake has been instrumental in helping us preserve our RAISE grant, which is a grant for Bothell Way. We'll talk about that too. And ultimately extending the obligation and construction deadline so that we can keep that funding. In short, that is, we're making the argument of if there's a delay in the project timeline that is outside of our control or is in a federal process to give an extension. And then also transportation funding overall of looking at opportunities for small and medium-sized cities with set-aside programs contained in the Transportation Authorization Bill. And Jake, before he even worked with us, has been a great ally in carving out room for what Bothell is, which is a city that doesn't necessarily, we're not necessarily small, but the next bucket is we're competing against Cleveland and large metropolises across the country. And so really trying his best to keep mid-sized cities on the map. So the 2 projects I wanted to cover, so Woodcrest Utility Improvement Project, if you need a little orientation, all of the construction taking place at 522 and 405. You're near the Woodcrest neighborhood right now. And so this is a mobile home park primarily for seniors 55 plus. What we are looking to do is funding there that would improve and replace water mains. In total, it has the main things that a city is expected to do of providing fire protection, water quality, and seismic resiliency along with sewer and stormwater improvements. This neighborhood was developed prior to incorporation into the city, and even so, long enough ago where a lot was allowed that we wouldn't allow now. But it's also, by definition, a neighborhood where there's income constraints for the residents. But much as we've been having other conversations around how we have to make things whole, or even in talking about the CHIP grant of we can't take money out of a utility to pay for services in just one area and then have the rest of the city pay for it. There's a lot of rules on how that works. And so we're looking for funding to help in partnership of getting that to be a project that we can move forward on. And we've had great support from our congressional delegation over the years. We're still a little short of being able to move that project forward. And so we have been looking for support at the state and federal level to do that. Bothell Way widening project, a little easier to visualize. It's kind of right outside of our building. But again, in the 22 fiscal year budget, we received a grant to help funding on that. And as I mentioned, really what we're looking for here is language in the appropriations bill to extend the obligation date for that so we can continue with property acquisition, continue with design work, and get to construction while maintaining that funding. The other two areas that I'll note are really more policy and council relations oriented, and so this is a good area for you to also weigh in on, which is around building connections. So Jake is really I'll say more than our concierge, but really makes this part easy. He is frequently in communication with our federal delegation offices, speaking on behalf of Bothell and helping provide the information they're looking for. Oftentimes, they're very quick turnarounds. When a congressional office calls, they need an answer quickly, and Jake really expertly helps us navigate through of exactly what they're looking for and is able to provide that, and has been a great asset to the city. And then also our work to protect funding. So lobbying against budget cuts, of preserving funding that's already been awarded, let alone trying to seek more funding, but also helping us navigate if there's any language changes or additional constraints put on projects that we have already been funded for. So I want to note that that's not only something in the agenda, so number 5, it's a significant amount of work, as you might imagine, even though it might not necessarily have the calculable ROI. But also, I also wanted to note that at the end of the agenda too, you'll see that there's a statement that captures broadly that the city of Bothell has a deep interest in an array of other federal policy issue areas that are in alignment with the council's 2040 vision. The city may communicate at any time to the delegation about any policies in the vision that are under legislative consideration, aligned with delegation priorities, and meet community concerns. So again, this is an area where we know there's a lot of interest in what's happening in DC, and Jake is a great eyes and ears and voice for Bothell in helping us make sure that we're advocating for what this community has asked of you as their local electeds. So that's the high level overview. Jake will fill in and correct any mistakes that I made, but also be able to tell more details about this if you have any questions. And again, just as we do in study sessions, a couple of questions just to open the door, but you're not constrained by this, is just if there are any questions about the current or upcoming sessions related to Bothell's federal interest, that's pretty broad, and I'm pretty sure you can work your question into that. But then also making sure that these 5 things plus the statement at the end are reflective of the activities that you wish to have support on from Jake in the coming year, because ultimately, again, he works for us and is looking for our partnership. So with that, I am going to probably be quiet the rest of the study session, but turn things over to you for your questions, and then Jake and I are here to navigate through any answers.
Great. Well, thank you, Cindy. It really is a pleasure to be here. One of the benefits that I get out of doing my job is the ability to come and actually meet with council and to talk in study sessions and have kind of these one-on-ones to get feedback, to get ideas, and to really make sure that we have an aligned effort moving forward. So thank you for the invitation to come tonight, and thank you for prioritizing this as a part of your work. I think it makes a big difference. Also, my work is easier when I get to work with clients like you, clients that are continually successful, clients that are continually putting forward meritorious projects to the delegation, clients that are frankly engaging with the delegation in productive ways. It allows us all to get better results. And I'm deeply appreciative of Kyle's generous comments, but the reality is you cannot deliver good results for bad work. And the work that the city does allows us to be successful. And the work that we've done specifically with the RAISE grant this year is a direct result of the city staff at the city of Bothell and the creative thinking and the creative preservation through some of these federal challenges. So my job is, again, to be interpreter and middleman between 2 entities, and I really appreciate my role and value working with you. On that, I'm not sure that Kyle left anything out. I think maybe some real quick news to share with the city, and then we can jump into the questions portion. The news portion is that it looks like, if you believe the news, it looks like we have an agreement in Congress as of today on most of the outstanding appropriations packages that have not yet been funded for the fiscal year, and in that is the pending funding for the city for the Woodcrest project. So if we do have bipartisan agreement on this bill, which I believe we do, Within the next 2 weeks, we should see an agreement that actually funds $1.092 million for the Woodcrest project in the appropriations bill. So again, it's less than what we need, but it's more than maybe we expected. So that's maybe a nice Venn diagram of where to be in this Congress at this time. The second thing that is good news is that we also have language successfully in the pending transportation appropriations bill that does provide a 3-year extension to the FY22 raise grant, both obligation and construction deadlines. This was actually 2 years more than what we asked for. So I'm proud to tell you for the first and only time that Congress over-delivered on something that we asked them to do. It will not happen again, so enjoy the moment, and we'll look forward to celebrating that. I'll take questions. What did I leave? What did I leave out?
Find out.
Okay.
I saw in the presentation that there was some wording around without policy writers, because we've encountered some of those coming up after the fact. How successful are you? Do you think that cities might see more of those? And how have those conversations gone with the delegation when you've?
I really appreciate this question. It's, I would say this is top of mind for most of my municipal clients right now. So essentially, just to daylight the issue, is that the executive branch is trying to encumber federal grant awards that were appropriated by Congress with executive policies and executive orders that the administration has put forward. So this is just more colloquially, this is the anti-DEI language, or preventing funds from going to communities that do not have, that refuse to collaborate with ICE, for example, in their communities. This is what the administration is trying to do to all federal grant awards that come through. This has created a little bit of a constitutional crisis in terms of who has the authority of how does federal money get expended. Precisely. Right now, those questions are before the courts, including most locally close to home, the King County versus Turner, decision. That is really what we are watching very carefully, because it encumbers a lot of these questions into how these grant awards will be done. Our delegation right now is fighting very hard to put language into the appropriations bills that create guardrails around this type of project. And I can give you a direct example. So the build grant, which you're all familiar with because the city was awarded $19 million in FY22, that build grant language is statutorily defined. And so when they did the bipartisan infrastructure bill, they actually wrote essentially the criteria for the notice of federal funding into the statute itself. So when the current build grant opening is available for applicants to come into, there isn't the ability to encumber that grant award with these types of extraneous materials or requirements from the administration. However, most federal programs don't enjoy statutory protection. They leave it up to the agencies to define kind of what those funding opportunities look like. They appropriate money, but they don't determine the precise grant requirements around how that money will be spent. So what you're seeing is Congress trying to rewind that process. They're trying to authorize more programs into statute and create the boundaries around that. What that has the impact of doing is creating a bolstering for the legal fights that are happening. This will eventually end up before the Supreme Court. That's where this is headed. So we're trying to create a legislative record that establishes the legislative branch's role in the administration of these funds. Maybe the question you asked me and I avoided, but I'll answer it anyway, is what do we do about it? The answer is we keep going forward as if we'll be successful in these suits. And nobody's going to force us to sign a grant agreement. We don't have to sign anything. But for now, I don't think we want to let go of federal funding opportunities in the hopes that, we'll be okay. Did I answer the question? It's a tricky one, and you're not the only city struggling with this. Most cities over here are.
I appreciate the distinction around like statutory protections, and how if more funding can have those protections, then that would be a path that Congress would pursue. And so, yeah, I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I don't have to wait for you. I need to remember to keep my arm down so I won't blind the important folks sitting over there. Thank you for this, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate it's so great to meet you. You've been doing a lot of good work for us, and hopefully we continue the collaboration moving forward. I have the first question. Well, there are two things related to the issue of the executive branch imposing requirements on receiving the grants of the cities, which we had to go through last year, as you know. And it was a very difficult decision for the council to make. The question is, do you accept money with extremely limiting and unconstitutional language? To be honest, I'm not a lawyer, but I know when something is racist and discriminatory. Or you actually protect your residents. And we had to make a very difficult decision as a council last year. And I hope we don't continue making those decisions. I don't know how long it's going to be until the Supreme Court or the courts, and then the Supreme Court rules against any of this stuff. But then would the damage, that's the question, would the damage have already been done? Question number one. And question number two is related to what's happening right now with all the ICE tracking and the issues that are happening, and the conversation we're about to have as a council about how do we as a city I know we have a lot of limitations as a municipality and in general as a state against federal actions. What can we do as a city to talk to our delegation to help us navigate this very interesting time, because I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. We have 3 more years of this, hopefully. But what can we do, and how can we work with you and the delegation to be able to help us and help other cities in the state who want to combat what's happening right now as far as immigration?
I think the city does the right thing right now, and let me give you some direct examples. The congressional delegation has specific staff assigned to cities. Senator Cantwell, Senator Murray, Congresswoman Del Bene, they all have a dedicated staff person that is there for cities in their jurisdictions. And we talk to that person weekly. I mean, it's much less of a lobbying conversation and much more of a partnership, right? What do they need from cities? What do we need from them? Kind of how do we exchange information? How do we stay on the same page? And one of the things that Bothell's reputation has done is establish that partnership. This really isn't. I realize how sophomoric this might sound, but the reality is we're not asking for help on things. We're offering to partner with them to get things done. That level of partnership extends to these types of critical social issues that are facing us that may show up in our communities. So our delegation wants to hear from us. We're doing that. The delegation wants to know how to reach the mayor, how to reach the city manager, how to reach me, and how do we respond to them in a timely and urgent fashion. We have that down. And so that conversation, those lines of communication are already open. That shared affinity and that shared goal, I think, is already established. And to be a little blunt, we're kind of making it up as we go along. There's not a playbook to follow here, right? So we're learning from other communities that have gone through this. We're talking to people about this. We're trying to figure out what are the action steps that are available for cities to take. We are looking at the state to pass protective languages, especially around things like collaboration with ICE and the privacy of law enforcement data and things like that. We're we're staying involved and engaged with the people who are looking to bolster defenses against this. I think that's my answer to your question. It's an insufficient answer, but I don't have a better one.
It makes sense. Up to 20% of, about 20% of Bothell residents are immigrants, and we have two representations over here. And a lot of our communities are going through a lot of issues. Obviously, we don't represent the community that's being impacted the most right now. It feels, in everything else we have control, housing, transportation, we can do all sorts of stuff, but I feel like in this particular issue, we always hear it's like, we can't do anything. It's federal trumps everything. And which I don't know how can, so sidebar, I agree with you, the congressional representative Delbene's, Congresswoman Delbene's office has been amazing. I've met them a lot, and we talk all the time. But it's like, what can we do to continue? Not only partners, like how can we create solutions that get us a step closer to where we want to get to at a local level? I understand Congress, it's messy and things take, even if it's even if it's functional, it takes forever to get things done. Right now, like, forget it. But how can we, as a city, do anything right now that feels impactful? That's not just a proclamation or a resolution or reviewing a policy, which is all we can do right now, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Is there anything else we can do? Maybe you don't have the answer right now, but can we have a conversation at some point?
Yeah, and I think that's part of that statement at the end too, is the continued review and focus on what are the things that are happening that are inconsistent with what Bothell intends and stands for. And, even including as new funding does come through again, I think the conversation of continuing to seek funding, even if we think it's unlikely. But we do have a great congressional delegation. And again, I know they're working hard for us. And if we're successful, we have to review every sentence of every page of every link of every site that it gets sent to see what's in there. And then our commitment is to bring things forward to council. So there's eyes wide open. And if you start seeing this cumulative effect, like, that tells us everything we need to know. In terms of strategies of changes, again, I think you're right. I don't think there's an answer today, and that theme of partnership with the delegation as they identify opportunities. I do know that they know Bothell is a city and a city council that is ready to work with them, and if there is a solution, if there's anything we can provide, that we'll be ready. But it's definitely one where I feel like we're still seeing, and we talked about this in September, we're seeing this fluidity of, almost day to day, the conditions change. So our best we can do is to keep as steady a course as possible, but keep watch, for sure.
One more comment. I have not seen, and my job is to pay attention to this, right? And I haven't really seen like a scorecard. Like, how do you evaluate, where is a city in terms of defending its vulnerable community? So, what are the series of initiatives that can be taken? I haven't seen that developed by anybody yet. And that would be a really interesting tool to evaluate. Like, what are the powers that a municipality has in the state of Washington? And then how do we evaluate kind of where you are at versus where Burien is at versus Lakewood? How can we learn from each other in terms of what is working, but how can we all hold each other to a higher account at the same time? That would be a conversation I'd encourage you to have with your neighbors, through the Association of Washington Cities, through suburban cities and other entities. But something like that would be really impactful for somebody in my role to how can we lift that, more in different communities?
Does that not exist only here, or does it exist elsewhere? But does
I don't know.
Washington
I haven't come across it. Yeah.
Okay. Anywhere in the country. Okay. That might be something that we can work on. Thank you.
Jake, thank you for coming. I'm not sure what I'm asking can fall into federal grants or federal funding. This is regarding 89 acres of Wayne Park that was preserved from a real estate development few years back. We had an amazing presentation from Bothell city staff, our parks director Nick and the consulting company. So this 89 acres of land is sitting at the intersection of three cities, Kenmore, Kirkland, and Bothell, but we own it. Are there any opportunities? Is it a crazy thing to ask? Are there any opportunities from a federal level to look for, for fund this kind of initiatives? Because the presentation was amazing last Thursday. Entire hall was filled with the entire city of Bothell residents. Everybody loved it. Everybody wanted it. Last few months, I don't know if I can say it, during our campaign, we reached out at a cave or bookstores. We asked what community wants. Everybody gave. We wanted a community center. We needed a dog park or a community gardens. A lot of people who lives in apartments, they don't have a place to grow vegetables. So we wanted to make this unique park in Washington State. Are there any opportunities we have for this kind of projects that we can think of?
I love it when I get asked questions that I know the answer to. Unfortunately, you're not going to like my answer.
So the answer is
Well, there's only three things that the federal earmarking process specifically just excludes from all federal funding, right? And they are parking lots. Okay, can't fund those with federal money. City halls, can't do that, and parks. And the idea is that is an obligation of the local government, and that's not something that they want to put federal resources into. And I think they're more concerned that if we do it for one, that is the only request we will get from cities from evermore. But that is the current status quo. Having said that, while there is not money for a park in that clear definition, many communities have looked at the federal earmarking process to look at what are the amenities in that park and what community service do they fund. And so, for example, is there a stormwater component to it? Is there a stormwater detention facility that can be part of a park project, right? That is a fundable entity if it meets other eligible criteria. Is there a community center building? Is there a cold weather shelter? Are there other things that serve other purposes that just happen to be located on a potential park property that we can develop with federal funding that is distinct from the park itself? So, the answer is no, but sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a salmon. We want to preserve salmon and all. So there were some grants for that, I think. So yes.
Yeah.
But thank you.
So the answer is parks, no, but things that live in parks, yes.
Got it. Okay, very good.
I was gonna wrap things up if nobody had anything to say.
I have something to say. Thank you for being here, and thank you for mentioning some of our recent successes too. It's good to remember that we may be in a bleak time, but we are still pretty successful and have been with transportation grants. One of the items here is obtain additional small and medium-sized city set-asides in all grant programs. And I'm wondering, because we maybe have exhausted our pipeline of projects that we've been looking for funding for, and we have a capital improvement plan, we have other projects down the road, can we maybe be strategic in which grant programs we're looking to expand these opportunities into to sort of match our maybe the future pipeline, so that if and when they do get authorized for small, medium-sized cities like us, whichever one we are, we're ready to go with an application? Or are you in conversation? Does the city kind of have given you a list of types of things that we're excited about?
Yes and yes and yes. I think part of the work that we do is that review, right? Trying to look on a longer time horizon. So what are we not doing in the current fiscal year, but what are we trying to aim for in the future? What are the problems in the future that we need to create a funding stream and a funding package and a funding stack to support? And what is the federal role kind of in that stack? How does it match with regional and state funding? I mean, we really do try to have those conversations on a long-term basis. Specifically with regard to the set-aside, we have audacious hopes. We solved this, we didn't solve it. We made a lot of progress in the last round of the build grant. So prior to, frankly, the year that you won a build grant, no city in Washington state below 100,000 in population size had ever won one. And in the 2021 infrastructure bill, we created language in that bill that mandated that half of all the awards had to go to communities below 200,000 in population size. And after that, we saw Linwood, we saw Bothell, we've seen Shoreline, Woodinville won a planning grant, Lakewood. There's been about 7 or 8 different entities in the state that have won build grants through that process at this point. We have created a formerly inaccessible pot of federal money and made it competitively accessible to smaller and medium-sized communities. But we only did that for the build grant. So the ask, the audacious ask, is to do it for every single program that is a discretionary grant program in the Department of Transportation and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And so we're trying to do that in the next reauth of the transportation bill. We have Senator Cantwell's support. She is the ranking member on that committee. We have Congressman Larson's support. He is the ranking member on that committee. We have bipartisan support through Mr. Baumgartner and Mr. Newhouse in Eastern Washington. We have a shot. We are regionally strong, like we have a lot of support in the Northwest, and we haven't extended that beyond. That is the challenge before us. But I'm hopeful that whatever program we identify in the city's CIP, that we can find a funding program at the federal level that we can make competitive for the city to compete within. And the city has proven time and time again that if you have the opportunity to compete for funds, you do that very, very well.
Yeah, we're really good at marketing. I think that maybe it would be helpful to see or research a little bit more into the transportation authorization bill and try and figure out other grant programs that are not currently accessible and ones that we may be able to build support with outside of the Northwest. Is that something that we should be doing? What's our charge? How are we going to help get this done?
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, you're in my dork sweet spot here. We've been working on this for years. This is a fever dream of the Johnston Group and our municipal clients, and I'm so glad to have you on the team. We have been working on this. We got this done in 21, and we are looking at the next reauth, which is this year in 26, right, to get the next wave of this done. Where we are weak right now is with making this a priority of NLC and the American Public Works Association and some of the other groups that have a larger national footprint than we do out here in the Northwest. So we've been working, the city of Shoreline's got 2 members on national committees for NLC that are championing this effort at that level. The city of Bothell, thanks to Aaron's work, we got connected to the American Public Works Association, and we're trying to bring them along as well. So the answer is yes. If you have connections to these groups, if you're participating in NLC meetings or committees or responding to newsletters, I mean, like any opportunity to take a swing at this is helpful at this point.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. Also, most cities fall into this designation. And historically, you know, when Bothell can compete for funds against any other city of your size without question, but it's really hard to compete with Detroit or Chicago when one of the evaluation criteria for funding is how many people will benefit from the project. More people live there. They're going to score higher in the grant evaluation. We need to do an apples to apples comparison when we compete for these grants in order to get funded. It's not a hard message.
You sold me.
When it comes to participation in like NLC committees and stuff, I think that there's a will to do that. But if you want to help us at like the annual sign up time by pointing out opportunities that would benefit our federal agenda, I think that would be really helpful because I unlike perhaps some people on council, don't look at public works committees as things where I'm like, yeah, I'd be so good at that. But I could be if I had to be. So please work with Kyle to point that stuff out to us proactively, perhaps.
Buckle up, Kyle.
Our real skill is talking, so if you need to point us in a direction, feel more than free. Does anybody else have any other questions?
A couple questions came up as I was listening to my colleagues. So I heard you say that Congress doesn't fund parks, but do they fund wildlife overpasses?
Yes, they do. See, now you're getting it.
Yes.
Yeah. Parks, no. Parks are, yeah,
A wildlife overpass to a park?
much different thing.
Yeah. Okay. That came up in the open space conversation recently. For context.
I would be remiss if I did not say the current priorities of this Congress and administration, I wouldn't put that at the top of our likely list right now.
I've also heard that buses aren't high on that list either. I'll leave that there. So I see throughout your presentation and the brief that we received mentions of the community development block grants, which Bothell just recently became eligible to apply for. I don't believe that we have applied to any. Is that correct, or have we?
Well, the big change is that now, once you pass the 50,000 mark population threshold, you don't have to apply anymore. You are a direct recipient city. So I'll defer to the city manager to talk more about that.
Yeah, and I think the magic of the timing of us becoming eligible is also that, like, the fiscal year 25 federal budget maybe, like, arguably didn't happen, and we're still waiting on 26. So there's a lot that we're to uncover. It was actually it was one of the first conversations that Jake and I had, though, because it was part of the RFP process, as we were asking the people who applied of how are you going to assist us with CDBG funding. And he did so by connecting us with other clients who had just recently passed that threshold. But we are still working and awaiting our first funding, and that's true of some other things too, of that, you know, when we're waiting for federal funding. So that's part of the journey, part of the mission, and we're keeping on it. But from an eligibility standpoint, yes, the 50,000 threshold is significant. And once we do get notification, there will be a future council conversation too about what do you want to do with that, including of, I'm going to make a presumption that we would want to maintain and keep those locally. There are sometimes cities that put money into, always dedicate it to regional programs, that sort of thing. But it depends on what we want to do with it and where the money can be leveraged. But it does open up a whole new door for us. But again, the first step will be receiving it.
That's great. I might have follow-up questions for you on that later, but
I would count on it.
Glad that we can have it. One more question, and then I'll pass it over. Clearly, we've had historical success in working with our congressional delegation, and our visits to DC have helped. I did appreciate your note in here that some of those maybe could take place by video conference, but have you and Kyle and staff talked about the next time you would like council members to visit DC to have a delegation visit?
Yeah, we have been in discussion of that, particularly in that the last 2 years, representatives from council attended the National League of Cities, and that's kind of been our modern foray into modern era foray of making these visits. Ultimately, again, National League of Cities has some value. We just talked about some of it, and maybe that's something to consider for next year. And it's also a very difficult time to make Hill visits, in that, if, as you can imagine, when many cities from every state are there to visit the representatives, it's a long line, and they're getting a lot of pitches, maybe not for city halls and parks, but for everything else. So there would be an opportunity to think about sending a delegation out, but as was noted around what our future ask is, the strategy right now would be is let's identify what our next series of asks are. Like right now, our posture is preserve and protect. As the next ask comes in, that might be the time to start leveraging those trips. So I think having an eye towards 2027, but again, if there's other thoughts, that's something we can check in on or discuss further too.
May I add a little context in there? In a perfect world where we don't worry about the calendar or budget or things like that, right? Then yeah, I think it's really important just from this is the best case scenario, right? You want to make sure that that trip and that relationship and that priority is a part of your workflow. I think that in the reality of an election year in 26, with the country and the state that it is, going back to talk about a utility project at Woodcrest it's hard to make that rack and stack, outside of a very, very neighborhood interest that Congresswoman Del Bene has and the senators have, right? So it's a little bit of a question of what can we do that doesn't require that trip? What is the benefit of that trip? And the answer is we can do both, right? We can go to DC. I'm in DC a lot. I'm your advocate in DC when you need me to be. If you all have plans to be in DC, we can make that work as well. But also, we can also bring the DC team to us. We can do that through video conference. We can do that through meetings here on the ground. We can certainly, invite the delegation out to the city for meetings and for relevant, timelines. That can also be part of our expectation. What we can't do locally, and one of the big values of going back to DC, is getting the professional staff expertise on some of the technical policies. So if we are working on the medium-sized city set-aside, I want to meet with the committee staff, right, on the transportation committee to dive deep into that policy issue and why it's important to us. We can't do that out here. So, that's one of the things where that really is geographically focused. But in terms of preserving the relationship with the Congresswoman, having the senators, know what our joint shared priorities are, we can do that locally.
Are there no regular meetings scheduled, or these are just ad hoc with our delegation?
Oh, that's a great question. We meet, I guess they're kind of ad hoc. We meet with them all the time, but, and then when we go back to DC, of course, that's a scheduled trip. We make formal meeting requests. We put that together. If there's something happening out here in the city, we issue kind of a formal scheduling request. We invite them out. We kind of work that process. But in terms of January 20th right now, no, we have no formal cadence of meetings established.
Maybe that's a good idea to have a cadence, perhaps.
I'm open to it. I wonder if it would work for them. They don't schedule that far out, and they tend to be a little reactionary kind of to their calendars. I think creating an expectation that we will meet on a certain cadence is very doable. I think executing it is the trick. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for coming out to chat with us tonight. We really appreciate it. I think this has been a really good, productive conversation. And it's nice to get a chance to see you and meet you in person and all of that. It is now 7:59. We are going to adjourn to closed session to discuss labor negotiations pursuant to RCW 4230-144A, expected to last 30 minutes with no action. By the time I'm done saying this, it will be 8 o'clock. So council will adjourn from closed session directly from there at 8:30 p.m. So if anybody is watching, you do not need to keep watching because we will not be back in this format.
Yeah. Thank you, City.